Welcome to Read This Author's Corner. I am your host, Alice Maria, and I am so excited to have with me today author Helena Haywoode Henry, the author of Last Chance, Live, her debut novel. Welcome, Helena. Welcome, Helena. It's so wonderful to have you on Read This. You have written this really impactful book that I believe is designed to really make you think critically. But before we go diving into your thought process behind creating this, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me, Alice. I'm so happy to get to chat with you. I'm Helena Haywoode Henry. I am the author of a debut novel called Last Chance Live. Last Chance Live is about teens on death row who compete on a reality TV show in which America votes for one contestant to win freedom and forgiveness, and the rest are eliminated to have their sentences implemented. So I am an author with Penguin. I'm also a mother of three. I used to practice law and now I write. And it's been a really wonderful journey. My experience in the publishing industry has been a lot of fun, and I'm grateful for it. And I'm happy to be here with you today.
Oh, well, excellent. I'm finding I'm getting a lot of lawyers. Lawyers, who knew lawyers were natural writers?
There's a lot of writing in the law.
It's interesting to know a little bit more. What caused you to make the transition? If we can just divert just for a quick second.
Sure. I always wanted to write. One of the really joyful experiences I've had this past year is connecting with my sixth grade English teacher, who talked about something I had written for her. This is now, 20 years ago, maybe more, in her class, and how she had always anticipated that writing would be in my future. And so she comments about how the thing I'd written for her, she used for years and years as an example for other students. And one year, my poor younger brother was in the class that she used it for, but the thing I had written was about him. And I think something about him and cookies or something to that effect. So it wasn't a great experience for him. But I've always wanted to write, and I was just fortunate to get the right opportunities to do so. And my path to publishing was fairly, quick in some ways. And then in other ways, there's just the, machinery of publishing takes its time. I began writing Last Chance Live in 2018. When I had given birth, I was pregnant with and gave birth to my first child. And it took me a few years to really get that draft down. Then I began querying it. I was fortunate to get my fantastic agents very quickly. And then we were off on submission not long after that.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. So you began this when you were pregnant, but this is a very powerful book. What caused you to want this to be the first thing that you put out into the world? Is because it's very strong,
Well, having a child was illuminating for me. And it caused me to think about what sort of books would I want my children to read when they're older, and what sort of books do I wish I had encountered when I was younger. And there's so many tremendous titles and authors out there doing incredible work. And there's a lot of areas of literature that kids need that other authors are covering. So I was interested in a bit of a different direction that encourages kids to really analyze and question what their world tells them and what sort of narratives they adopt as true. Ultimately, the specific story of Last Chance Live was inspired by one little girl. It was inspired by a little girl I knew during my time when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Pennsylvania. I spent some time volunteering in a Head Start classroom in West Philadelphia, and I met this 4-year-old child in that classroom who was an absolute star. She belonged on television. She was vivacious. She was gregarious. She was bold. She was brilliant. And I also, during this time, had the privilege of babysitting for a different child who was the child of Penn professors. Each of these children both lived 2 blocks away from the University of Pennsylvania. One thing that struck me about the child in the Head Start program is that even though she was 2 blocks away from Penn, this massively resourced, storied, elite university, the likelihood that she would ever be able to take advantage of its privileges was almost none. The likelihood that she would ever attend the university was very low. And her circumstances and her life trajectory were likely going to be very different from that of the other child for whom I babysat. And so, though, to my knowledge, that young girl has done nothing like what Eternity Price, the main character of Last Chance Live, has done. The story of eternity and thinking about those types of children in America that either we don't see or we just don't particularly contemplate how their trajectories are formed and what sort of factors go into that. That was really important to me to explore. The premise of the book came from an American Bar Association resolution that was passed in 2018, I believe, around the time I started writing, that suggested and prompted jurisdictions to reconsider the application of the death penalty to people under the age of 25 in light of emerging neuroscience that shows that the human brain does not finish developing until around 25. And so it raises this interesting question that we have in our country of when we deem a person a legal adult at 18 versus when do they become a biological adult? And are there ways that our laws and our systems are not really designed to consider the biological reality of adulthood and youth?
I love the name Eternity. Was that motivated by any particular?
Yes, I named her Eternity Price because Eternity is an everyman character. So, Eternity's story is working in archetype and stereotype, but it's also, so it's a specific story about one person and examines how there are certain people that we don't look to for universal lessons. It examines how there are certain people that we make assumptions about because of their background. So there's an easy way to stereotype Eternity, but Eternity is also an archetype because she's a stand-in for all of us. And that's why I named her Eternity Price. Much like Eternity, we are all on death row. We've all done terrible things. The external consequences of those things might differ, right. But the internal source of what we've done is all the same. It all comes from the human heart. And like Eternity, we are all headed to a grave at some point. And so the questions that Eternity has to grapple with are the same ones that we need to contend with, whether it's how do I contend with what I've done? How do I address what I've done? How do I repair the things I've done? Do I have to? And also, where am I going? And what sort of legacy will I leave on this earth? And what do I want my life here to look like?
As a creative person, I also love to talk about the types of things that inspired you or the type of things that caught your attention and you said, oh, I have to share this. So when you were building this out, are there like things that she wouldn't be who she is if you didn't share these things or this about her?
So I wanted Eternity to capture the dreams of quintessential American childhood. And that was really important to her characterization. And, for readers, I often say that readers are, in a sense, one of the main characters of Last Chance Live because Eternity is a mirror. right? Because she reflects us. Her condition is our condition. And there's a couple of different facets to that. So one of them is that reality that we're all on death row in a sense. Another is that, much like eternity, we all have similar hopes and dreams and aspirations and longings and wants. And one of eternity's is for her to have the kind of childhood that she did not experience, for a variety of reasons, some of which are systemic, some of which are just what happened in her life, some of which are her own fault. There's a lot that is baked into there, and there isn't a clear and easy answer as to what's the real, reason that she is where she is. And my hope is that recognizing how these universal drives that people like eternity have, that they want the same things we want, helps us to see kids like eternity a little bit brighter, and to also recognize that the gulf between people like her and people like us, and I say us to mean just a particular demographic, whether it be those who are not involved in the criminal justice system or those who are of a different socioeconomic background, that the gulf between eternity and others is actually not that wide. There's actually not really much of a gulf at all.
Mm, that's true. The fact that you come out of law and you chose to write this book, it actually brings up a whole other set of, I see it from a totally different perspective than say someone like me writing it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow, she was probably going, you
Well,
see
there's unique, maybe the word for it is neuroses that the legal background infuses into the writing of the book. For example, now granted, the type of law I practice was not criminal work. I have no professional experience with the system I'm going to write about. And in the book, the kids come from the system, but they spend the majority of the book on the show.
Right.
But as I was writing, there were particular neuroses that came out, like being intentional about making sure that each of the crimes that the contestants committed were actually capital crimes under their state statutes, things like that. Or just making sure I really understood what the process looks like from arrest, all the way through your trial and then your sentencing, and trying to get a sense of what it's like as a young person, particularly, and perhaps a young person from a disadvantaged background, to try to navigate a system that feels very Byzantine because its language is not familiar to you, right? Its terminology is not familiar to you. One thing that Eternity talks about is how her experience in the system felt like people talking around her about her in SAT words that she didn't get. And nobody really, at any point until it was too late for her in terms of the legal system, nobody really interrogating what she thinks or what she feels, independent of that.
And we can, I shouldn't say we can all, but in some areas of our lives, whether you've been through the legal system or the medical system or the finance system, there's always some place you're going to go into that people have this innate understanding of what they're talking about. And when they're talking systems, these people who have a way of talking, and although they're talking about you, it does feel like they're talking around you. Happens a lot in the medical field.
Right.
The doctor and the nurses is talking, and you go, hold on, explain that. Break that down.
Yes.
So when you're talking about a child and you have adults, which adults have languages that don't necessarily connect to children or young people. So I could see where Eternity would feel like disconnected from what's happening to her. Like she's being pushed and she's not being considered. And I don't think there's many people that wouldn't understand that.
Yeah. And as she's being pushed, she's experiencing her dream get derailed. You know, her dream was to experience a specific kind of childhood, a specific type of young adulthood. She wanted to go to Disney. This is the one thing she wanted as a child. She wanted her family to be whole and intact. She wanted to go to Penn. She wanted to attend the university that, much like the little girl I knew, she lived 2 blocks away from. None of these things were realistic aspirations for her, but she held on to them nonetheless. And so as she is processed through the system and then on the show, she's watching that dream derailment happen in real time, which is something we all experience to an extent for different reasons.
Yeah. And then you created this show for freedom's sake. And so, because we're not giving away the book, but tell me about the thought process in creating the show for Eternity.
So the show really seemed like a natural extension of American culture generally. We are very much an entertainment-minded culture. We are an innovative culture, and we enjoy applying unique solutions to different problems. And, you know, as I talk about Last Chance Live as being a framework that helps us examine how to think, but not what to think. And the book does not offer clear conclusions. One of the ways to see that would be the premise. This show itself. Is the show a harrowing, horrific, exploitive idea? Or is it a unique opportunity given to people who don't have many other choices, right? Their alternative, as Maternity's lawyer explains to her, is to spend years, if not decades, on death row, winding through the appeals process, and grow old, waiting for their sentence. So there's different ways that readers can walk away, different conclusions that readers can walk away with on that. The show is also very much in the ethos of how America views criminals historically. Dr. Tressie McMillan Cotton, who's a sociologist at UNC Chapel Hill, writes about how the criminal is the original American celebrity. And a number of public intellectuals and podcasters and activists sometimes will comment on either the history of public executions or some have commented on their desire for re-establishing public executions. Mm-hmm. It's something that seems to be in the soil in America. So a reality TV show in which people on death row compete for America to bestow upon them forgiveness seemed like a natural fit and a deeply American story.
Yeah, and I like the redemption and forgiveness.
Yeah,
you know, it's not that you're free to. I like the fact that you added the layer of that. This freedom also comes with kind of a level of forgiveness. Like you're not coming out and still making up for what you've done in the past. But then there's a part where Eternity is so internalizing the bad things that she's done. And I think that happens as a young person, right? Yeah. When you're young, the least little bad thing you do seems like the most tremendous thing. So I can imagine that when you have done something so tremendous, it must feel completely unforgivable. So the fact that you have, in the book, you are saying when you walk away, if you get this freedom, you're free.
Yeah. So the book examines forgiveness in a specific way. One is, what does forgiveness require? And two is, what are the ways that we seek forgiveness and do they work? Wow. The show contestants are seeking forgiveness from their fellow citizens. They're looking to America for it, to absolve them. But in thinking about that first question, what forgiveness requires, the show's executive producer in a media interview that is shared with contestants, he explains forgiveness in a particular way. And he explains that forgiveness has cost, has concrete cost to it that must be paid. The example that the executive producer uses, and this is a character that Eternity battles throughout the show, is a car accident that if, I hit your car and I caused $10,000 worth of damage, you can choose to forgive me. You can say, I forgive you, but that damage still has to be paid or you're going to be driving around with a broken car. Someone has to pay the price of that $10,000. And the executive producer references real world university researchers who have come up with a figure that encompasses the cost of the types of crimes the contestants committed. And they put that number at $20 million. So what the contestants are actually competing for on the show is a pot of money, $20 million, that will absolve them of their guilt, that will pay the price of forgiveness, and set them free, as you're saying. The reason the executive producer gives for why multiple contestants can't win or they can't sort of change the rules is that there's one pot of money. It's $20 million and the price of the crime is to be paid. So as we think about our own lives, as we think about eternity as a mirror, it begs the question of how do we seek forgiveness for our actions, which maybe didn't cost $20 million, but they might have cost 10,000. If forgiveness is a bill, right, that has to be paid. And often when we try to forgive others, what we're saying is I'll swallow what you've done and I'll pay your bill. That's very, very hard to do. It also begs the question of who's going to pay our bill, when we have an outstanding balance, and are the different ways that we look to have it paid, America's votes, or sort of covering up the bill with achievement and accolades and good grades or a high salary or whatnot. Do they work? Can all of this sort of outdo and erase the things that we know we've done? So yeah, there's a lot to say about forgiveness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love conversations that make me think differently. Like, does the way we look at how we seek forgiveness, does it work? I'm like, oh, I've never.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of forgiveness is real and you think of damage as concrete, yeah. Does it work?
Does it work?
I would submit that the state of our country right now suggests it doesn't. Whatever we're doing is not working, right?
What I was thinking about was the fact that quite often, like, I know that I'm not loaning, let's just use $100. I'm not loaning more than $100 because if you don't pay it, I'm not chasing you down.
Right.
So
yeah.
I can forgive.
You would have to swallow it. You would have to forgive and absorb the $100 yourself. Yeah. It's very hard. It's very hard to do.
So like listening to you say that, that's what came to me. Like, yeah, there is a cost. And then you actually do put a price on it. And the easiest thing is loans, because some people are good at paying back loans. Other people are absolutely horrible.
Right.
So if you know that, giving somebody $1,000 is going to cause you to lose a friendship, would you do it? So that's what I was like, oh yeah, I see where she's coming from.
Yeah, food for thought.
Food for thought. So in one of our conversations we were talking about, discussing is the screen time aspect of our daily lives, influence. That's the word I'm looking, how it might have influenced her life.
Yeah. So when I talk about Last Chance Live offering a framework of how to think, but not what to think, this question of screens is something that the book is sort of subtly putting a spotlight on. And I'd like to invite readers of all ages to think critically about the role that screens now play in our lives. And Eternity and her experiences offered as of a fact pattern, a way to do that, a case study of sorts. So citing one of my favorite sociologists again, Dr. Tressie McMillan Cotton, she says, and I want to make sure I don't misquote her, the internet probably ruined everything good and made everything bad worse. And I'll leave it to readers and listeners to determine the extent to which they agree. But Eternity, her entire existence is really shaped by screens. Without giving up too much, she's raised on screens that give her messages from society about her worth, about her value. Her peers are similarly raised on screens, influenced by screens that impact how they view a classmate like her, who is overweight, who is dark-skinned, who is not the traditional body type that is valued in the American media ecosystem. Eternity ends up, without giving up much information about her crime, one question for readers to consider is what would her experience in Trajectory have looked like if she did not have a screen? Would it have been possible? Could she have even ended up where she did? And then she seeks to be saved through a screen, through the reality TV medium. And, that we think of reality TV as on a literal TV screen. Last Chance Live in particular, and many shows today are really playing out on our devices, right? Like there's some subset that watch it on TV, and then there's everyone else who sees the clips and the reels and the fandoms emerge and whatnot around social media. And when Eternity seeks to take charge and exercise some agency in what happens to her and try to beat the system as she's on the show, the main place that she goes to try to do so is a screen. So again, it's a hard book to talk about without everything away.
Right, and I don't want us to give away anything. I just want people to...
But Eternity's life really parallels how deeply integrated we have become with screens. And I think it begs a question of the same way you could question, would Eternity even have ended up where she did without it? Where are we ending up, or where are our young people ending up? That would not be possible without a screen. What sort of harrowing and adult experiences are young people undergoing or exposed to because of a screen? How has life changed? And also how much like Eternity, how are we seeking to be saved and rescued? How are we seeking forgiveness, right? Our bill to be paid through a screen. And, as a parent, I have spent a lot of time really thinking deeply about the role that I hope screens plays in our life and doesn't play in our lives. But it's a analysis that I would really invite every reader and every listener to think about.
I saw something a while back, and because what we see on a lot of screens, especially when it comes to social media or searches, is done by an algorithm, right?
Yes.
And someone said, if someone came from an alien country and they logged into social media to see what the people of this planet that they were visiting was like, what they would probably encounter was a lot of angry, violent people, because that's what the algorithm pushes, because that's what gets the views. It's not necessarily a true reflection of what's out there, but it is what it's what makes money.
Well, it's interesting to me that you say angry and violent, and I agree with that. And I think that the fact that that's what the Martians or whatnot would see, that that's a snapshot, and the fact that that's what gets the clicks and the views, and that's the content we long to engage with, I think helps illustrate why Eternity Price is an everyman character, why Eternity is a stand-in for all of us. The anger and violence that she harbors in her heart, I think it's easy to look at it and say, oh, that's her. I would never, and I'm nothing like that and whatnot. But the fact that, as you say, aliens would see a snapshot of just angry, violent people, and then, consumers longing for more angry, violent content shows we all are Eternity. We actually do harbor the anger and the violence and whatnot that she does. We may have different external trappings. We may drive a nicer car than she'll ever own. We may have a better job or whatnot. But we all are her. And there's something to that I think is tied to forgiveness, right? If our base selves, right, what we reveal about our nature to the Martians on the internet, on social media, is anger and violence, that suggests that we really do need to think about forgiveness deeply, right? Because either or both, all of us participating in that anger and violence have to think about the cost, the damage, what is the literal cost of that? How do we pay that cost? Or those of us perpetuating it, those of us consuming the content. I think it's impossible to walk away from content that is angry and violent, from a media ecosystem that is angry and violent, and not be changed by it, not be influenced by it, right? Like the things that we expose ourselves to, they form us, they shape us. And Eternity as a character is largely formed by the anger that she was exposed to, whether it be the anger of her peers, whether it be the anger that she sort of downloads from adults in her life. I think that there's a lot to be said for, as you put it, what the Martians would see. And there's a lot that tells us about ourselves.
As we're wrapping up our conversation, what would you say is the main thing that you would like the readers to take away from your book?
The main thing that I would hope readers take away is that when I say they are the main character, it is not just because Eternity is a mirror and there's a lot of darkness and humanity in the world. It is also that readers are the brightest reflection of hope in the story of Last Chance Live. So Last Chance Live is not a traditional story in which you, as a passive audience member, follow along a protagonist as she battles a system and emerges, and conquers and whatnot. It's really more a case study that positions the reader as the agent of hope, the agent of renewal, the agent of repair. It asks the reader to do the analytical work of identifying what needs to change. What do I change internally? What can I change in my community? Where can I find the Eternities in my life, in my school system, in my class, or in my neighborhood, or in the neighborhood, a few miles down? And how can I be the source of the repair that this book shows that we need? In a lot of ways, I say that the story of Last Chance Live really begins after the last page. That's where the full and true story is. It's in what the reader does with the questions that they form from the text. It's about what change the reader implements in the real world.
And you transform after you read this.
Yeah.
Can you become the change that's needed to help?
How can you transform yourself, and how can you transform your communities? Speaking personally, writing this book and meditating on the cost of harm, meditating on forgiveness, was deeply transformative for me, as I thought, well, I'm not Eternity. I don't have anything like her criminal experience, but I cause harm all the time, right? Some of my friends or my husband or whatnot might be the first to volunteer examples, right? And thinking about that harm as having a price, right? Thinking that every time my husband forgives me, or my children forgive me, or a friend forgives me, or family, what price am I imposing on them? and what is my ultimate solution as I walk towards my eternity, to think about that price.
And there's another point that I wanted to bring out, because we talk about screens and the fact that screens have, but when I think about it, we had the Roman Colosseum and Gladiator. Um, this bloodlust has
Yeah.
always been there.
Yeah.
There's always been this thing in humanity to harm each other. But
Yes. Yes.
but what I think the screen has done, and this is just my opinion, is because it has made almost caricatures of the real impact of death
Mm.
and war and
Mm-hmm.
violence. Because after you watch the movie, you get up and you see the actor in another play or thing. So I think it has kind of neutralized our understanding of the depth of
Yeah.
damage that it gets done to people when it happens in real life, because you see it on the screen, and even with all the emotions that come out, you walk away from it and you go to the next thing. But when you think of the fact that unless you are the family or the person that has been impacted by it, it's not entertaining. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
entertaining to everyone else, but it's not entertaining to the person that's experiencing it. And I think screens have made us numb to the fact that what we see has real consequences and a real cost.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, think of the Roman Colosseum. What the screens have done is they've amplified and made that accessible, right? You do not have to travel to the Colosseum to go see it. And, I think this ties to our earlier conversation about calls for public executions,
Mm-hmm.
right? That bloodlust, but also what those calls are implicitly saying is the execution should be televised, right? Public executions, nobody means get in your horse and buggy and go travel to the town square.
Right.
What they mean is put it on a form where everyone can see. And there's something about what that reflects about our culture and our hearts that I think is worth examining. In a lot of ways, this is just my personal take as I process life in America. I think that we have become a culture of public executions already. We have become a culture that reflects a lot of the bloodlust you're talking about. To be frank, in a sense, we tolerate executions by shootings all the time in public spaces, in schools, in grocery stores, in movie theaters, in restaurants. And what that suggests to me is perhaps the bloodlust, the disregard, the dehumanization that characterizes some of our criminal justice system and characterizes some of our capital punishment system, it does not stay contained within prison walls. Right. It is not siloed and only applied to that population. The drives and the ethos that informs that seeps out of those prison walls into our public culture that affects the rest of us. Yes. And so I think it invites reflection about, do we want to change that? Would we like to be different? How do we change that? And this is where I say the reader is just the brightest reflection of hope here. Because ultimately, this book is not that fictional, I think, but ultimately it's a fictional book. Right. And what matters in the real world is what the reader can do concretely to help things be different. And often it can start with just find eternity, or if you are eternity, think about the trajectory you're on. Think about what resources do you want to avail yourself of to help your trajectory be different. It can be working through systems. It can be trying to transform systems. It can look at a lot of different ways. People have different gifts and different talents and different action items that they might walk away from the book with. But But I have a lot of faith in our ability to pursue transforming America to a culture of justice and mercy. I think it can be done.
And thank you so much for your time and your talent, and thank you for making us think critically. I miss critical thinking, and I love the fact that you didn't create a book that was just follow the leader, like this is what we want you to think. But I love how you describe it, not what to think, but how to think. Am I saying it right?
Yes.
So I love that aspect of it. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your talent.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I'm glad I got to chat with you.
I'm so happy to have spoken with you as well. I would like to thank my special guest, Helena Haywoode Henry, the author of Last Chance Live, her debut novel. Please go out and pick up a copy. It will make you think. It is a transformative experience. This has been Read This, Author's Corner. I am your host, Alice Maria. Keep reading, keep growing, and stay empowered.